Herbert from the right hash. McConkey in motion, settles in the slot right. Herbert looking to throw, and now shovel passes, has Haskins. Haskins on his horse. 20, to the 10, to the 5, to the end zone. Touchdown, Chargers! Hassan Haskins with some Wolverine magic. Harkening back to his college days when he rushed for 20 touchdowns under Jim Harbaugh.
Somebody forgot to tell Justin Herbert his ankle's hurt.
That was our friend Matt Money Smith and our frenemy Daniel Jeremiah on KYSR. Yes, the Chargers with a second half comeback. Great performance by Justin Herbert, puts it away 34-27. Welcome to NFL Daily, presented by Uber Eats. We start the show with friends on the radio, and now we welcome one of my friends, one of my favorites in the business, Mina Kimes of the Mina Kimes Show, featuring Lenny and many other programs we can get to later. Thank you, Mina, for giving me and giving the show some good luck, some juice this Chargers-Broncos game.
Yeah, this was a good game. I think at one point, maybe in the first half, actually, I texted you, this is actually fun.
Yes.
I don't know why I didn't think it would be. I guess coming off of the dud that the Chargers put up last week against Tampa, and even though Denver won, it didn't look great against Indianapolis. Bo Nix had a tough performance. So I was a little bit underwhelmed headed into this. But I mean, Stephon voice, this game had everything. It even had a free kick, which I feel like we could spend all 30 minutes just talking about that.
Yes, we should, and we will get to that. And as great a topic it was for Blue Sky and just a bizarre moment, it was the first free kick since 1976. So most of the people listening and watching were not alive for the last one. It actually was a key moment of the game, kind of a mistake by Sean Payton, gave the Chargers a chance for that free kick, and then a penalty did as well. We'll get into that more, but that was 3 free points right before halftime that absolutely made a difference. But I think we just have to start with our guy Herbo, because we thought he came into this game with an ankle injury. I'm sure he did, but his legs were a huge part of the story. Before he took about negative 20 yards during that weird final sequence where they're trying to run out the clock. He had over 45 yards rushing in really key moments of the game, and his mobility on some of the throws he made just reminded us of why we love Justin Herbert. And not to get too weird about it, but it's like one team had a great quarterback having one of the best games of his season, and the other team had a rookie quarterback, and it really did feel like a difference on a night where these two teams looked pretty even otherwise.
Yeah, it impacted how the two coaches approached the game. And we can get to the fourth down decision at the end. But overall, it was a very conservative game plan for Denver. Unsurprisingly, that's how they've approached a lot of the season. But so many throws behind the line of scrimmage in this one for Bo Nix. Whereas with the Chargers, I think at one point had a play action rate of almost 60%, which I love, because it was like Gregg Roman was like, wait, I don't have to run the ball. I can just keep calling play action over and over and over. And it was working, but it was also working, Greg, not because the linebackers were fooled. There was a point in this game, not even like maybe early in the second half, where the Denver defense was clearly like, they were like, oh, he's not handing this off. But Herbert was using that mobility you talked about to evade the rush on play action, including on the final touchdown. Like, a lot of those play action passes were not him in a Nixian pristine pocket. It was him evading pressure, as he so often does, and getting off really difficult passes.
Yeah, I thought his health, his relative mobility ended up being such a huge part of this game, because the Broncos ended up only pressuring him on 30% of their dropbacks. They only blitzed him, according to Next Gen Stats, 27.8%. And that's because when they did blitz him, sometimes you're playing into his hands. And that happened in their first meeting, where it was more long, slow drives. But he's so smart, and they're well coached. and he went 6 for 6 for over 100 yards against the blitz, and it made Vance Joseph back off for a lot of the game. And I thought the pass protection really held up. This was a great game for the Chargers offensive line, which to me has been up and down. It's been flat out bad in the running game, and it wasn't great tonight, and they didn't try to run that much, but they at least did what they did earlier in the season where they popped one big one late with Gus Edwards, and they really protected Herbert well when it was 4-man rushes. And for the most part, he did find enough open receivers. We got our guy Ladd going crazy. Josh Palmer made a couple plays, and they made an 11-point comeback. They were down 24-13 in this game. That was not a game that the Chargers would have won, I think, at any other point in the Justin Herbert era.
The receiving chart for both of these teams is hilarious because I think you and I both follow the NFL pretty closely. You host an NFL daily podcast. There's guys I haven't heard of. Hand up. I'm on both these teams. Like, we're catching passes. Tucker Fisk, anyone on the Chargers? Did you know? Was that I just Stone Smart by this point I'm aware of. And
these are guys that we learned in like the last 2 weeks, or basically, where they've had to come up, which is true of this team, like on both sides of the ball. It's a little wild.
Yeah.
Yes.
But neither side, I thought, had a real edge in terms. I mean, Broncos have Cortland Sutton, who's very different style of player from Ladd McConkey. I would maybe put them have them comparable in terms of like usefulness, though. Obviously, very different players, but beyond that, it's been slim pickings for both of these guys. I do want to go back to the Herbert playmaking and mobility thing, though, because I've always really been a huge fan of Herbert's game. I am a Herbert defender, even during the great Herbert Tua wars of 2022.
Not everyone survived. Mina, there's some bodies
but even
back there.
Amidst my love for his game, while I always believed in him and his unbelievable talent and his processing, as you said, watching him at some point, it feels like you're like watching a football Terminator going like 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, boom, boom. There have been moments, and I felt this way at times last year, like where I just wanted him to go into F-it mode and be a bit more of a playmaker because he's such an incredible athlete. He's gigantic and he's fast. And that's one thing I really just loved about this performance of his is I felt like this is the Herbert that maybe some of us have been waiting for a while.
Ooh, that's a good call because the situation of the game, how much they needed it, and we can finish with all the playoff probabilities, but the Broncos missed the chance to clinch their playoffs, and they could be sweating it out depending on some other results, and the Chargers are now really in the driver's seat. They only need one more win or potentially even could get in this weekend if they get a bunch of losses. I totally agree because they're trailing in this game, and the passing game is okay, but it's a little erratic, and it felt a little Mahomesian that he ran when he absolutely needed to run. And they got fortunate. They had a couple penalties, one on a late hit on Herbert, but that was after he ran, if I'm right, which sometimes that happens. So he helped force that. And then another on just a horse collar on what would have been a sack, which was a big play in this game. But he absolutely went into F-it mode. Let's actually listen to our friend Matt Money Smith again on the go-ahead touchdown.
Edwards in the backfield. Darius Davis in motion. Herbert to throw. Pump fakes, and now to the end zone. Caught. Touchdown! Chargers! Darius Davis. A hole shot from Justin Herbert. Left sideline to the end zone. 20 yards.
Ooh, that was so sweet. I just want to hear Mina Kimes cook on that play because that was kind of the play that put this game over the top for him.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a mesh concept. I think McConkey was running because they had hit him on the overs and the crossers a couple times, and immediate pressure forces Herbert off of his spot. So he's rolling left, and this is so important to emphasize the physical difficulty of what he did, going full speed to his left with a defender bearing down on him, sort of half flipping his hips, and then hitting that whole shot, a teardrop of a throw, a perfect pass over another defender. That is like a 0.0005 level of difficulty throw. I was so glad they showed it from the end zone view immediately after, because you could see that right when it happened, but as with so many Herbert throws, you really have to see the end zone view to appreciate how difficult it is. what he does, and it was unbelievable. That's one of the best throws. I mean, I've seen him make them. He's made some of the craziest throws of the last 5 years, but I would put that up there with a lot of his best throws.
Yeah, and considering the situation, this is one of the best. That was I think that was the biggest play of the game. I think this was the biggest moment of their season thus far. To me, as I wouldn't call myself a Chargers fan, but I went from Phillip Rivers to Justin Herbert. I'm always kind of pulling for them as kind of one of my teams. This felt like a game they wouldn't have won in the past, and the first real moment where it's like, yeah, it's different. They're building something. The Jim Harbaugh Chargers are just a little different. It's only their second win against a winning team, and the only other one was against Denver. These two teams have been schedule merchants. They were combined 2-10. I saw the Amazon graphic against winning teams, which is crazy. And now it's 3-11, I guess, and two of those are against each other. So I know they have more to do, but I just think there was like a toughness and an intelligence to the play calling on both sides of the ball, because you mentioned not knowing the receivers. And both these offensive coaches are great, but one of them has Justin Herbert to work with, and the other has a rookie quarterback who's working through it. What do you think about Bo Nix's performance? Because it's funny, it's such a perfect example of box score scouting, because their lines are very similar. Nix threw 9 more passes for less yards, 29 for 40, but he has 2 touchdowns. Like, if you care about quarterback rating and completion percentage, he's off the charts with that tonight. And Herbert was similar, except he's the one that actually made the one big mistake in the game. He had an interception when they were trying to go score, and it was a great defensive play, but he ends up with 284 and 2 touchdowns. So I thought Nix, it was a conservative game plan. Like, how did you think, though, he played within that game plan and beyond it?
There in the first half, there was a point where I think when they were up, they had 21 points, and I posted this on Blue Sky. He had something like 2.1 air yards per attempt.
Right.
And I guess I didn't mean that as Nick slander. I actually meant it as to be complimentary of the Broncos offense, because at that point, Greg, I was feeling like certainly that the Broncos were in control, but I also felt like Sean Payton was calling a hell of a game. I mean, that first drive, they just ran it down their throats, which has been a vulnerability for this Chargers defense. Their worst defensive performances have been against teams that could run the ball well, against Tampa recently, Baltimore, 2 very good rushing teams come to mind. And Denver's been, a little bit up and down the run game. But at that point, I thought, oh, okay, they're kind of following the formula for that. And I thought Nix, he didn't make any super high degree of difficulty throws, but as he has all year, he made some good throws on the move. That's definitely when he's best. Peyton leans into that. He made good decisions. There were a couple times in the first half where he turned down covered throws, and I thought it was the right call. And you had check downs and swing passes that were going for significant yardage. The Mims swing, I think, was the one where it was a great play call from Peyton where he came across in motion. I think it went for like 50 plus yards or whatever. But
54, and that was such a typical sequence. They had just picked up a 3rd and long on a dump off. Like their 3rd and longs or 3rd and mediums were so easy for them against this Chargers defense, which is short a number of players.
And then I think what happened in the second half, there was a few things. I do think they kind of abandoned the run a little bit at times, particularly in the third quarter. I thought Minter started turning up the heat, and that's when you kind of saw a little bit more of the rookie come out. Some, hesitation, a couple misses here and there. And those are the moments when a veteran quarterback, certainly one of Herbert's caliber, can kind of make the plays rather than just executing the offense. And he wasn't able to do that. But as we've said, he's a rookie quarterback.
Now, are we being like 26% nicer because we're so fearful of Broncos Twitter? I mean, Broncos Blue Sky, I think they're fine. They're cool. But yeah, the Bo Nix brigade is going to calm down a little bit after the last couple of weeks, just because I think last week was his worst game since September, maybe his worst game of the season. And tonight he was fine, but they needed more. And you're absolutely right to point out that he's throwing the ball to Lucas Kroll and who was Watson? You're right. There were some crazy names. Nate Atkins.
Nate Atkins is the one.
There was he's not playing with a full deck either. So it was like a lot of.
Another Broncos running back. They have like 500 running backs. I'm sorry, Blake Watson. What?
Yeah, that was the guy I was thinking. Blake Watson, who was playing a little bit of fullback, a little bit of running back, and tonight was a reminder to me that their offense, while efficient, is not good enough to totally expose what is a really banged up and beleaguered Chargers defense that I think is vulnerable. And you saw that in the first half. They were pretty dominant in the first half. I'm pretty shocked that they only ended up with 27 points in this game the way that it started.
Yeah, I don't know if they, like, say they had to run the ball more, and maybe if Knicks had hit on a couple throws, I don't know if the result would have been that different because Justin Herbert just kind of went into Terminator mode in the second half. But I didn't come out of this, just to go to your next question, whether I didn't come out of this with like a reduced opinion of him. I just kind of felt like water is finding his level a little bit in terms of him being a rookie and being one who has, executed this offense competently. But if you're going to, let me put it this way, as we sort of turn our eyes towards the playoffs, I don't have an expectation that he is going to have some kind of a linear progression to ascend to new heights. I think that would have to come probably the following season.
Right. And this performance was a very typical Bo Nix performance. The biggest difference between this year's Broncos and last year's Broncos, who was it that sent that tweet out in terms of their offensive stats were so similar as last year? Who was it? Do you remember? No,
yeah, I saw the post you're talking about. Maybe Ian Hartee?
Ian Hartee. I just wanted to give him credit. The offensive numbers were so similar. The difference is the defense has been fantastic this year, and it just wasn't tonight. They weren't consistent enough. They're thinner in the secondary. You have Surtain, but without their starting combination, they're thinner in the secondary, and the Chargers were able to take advantage of it more. Should we talk a little about the free kick? Because yeah, this is wild stuff. It really reminded me of the Doug Flutie drop kick, which I happened to be watching live, so I remember it well, but not much of America was, because it was a week 17 game for a Patriots team that wasn't playing for anything because they had already clinched everything, and it was late in the fourth quarter at like a 1 p.m. game. This was prime time, and it was the first thing, in a meaningful game. It helped swing the game, and it was the first time most of us have ever seen anything like it. What was the experience like for you?
I was shocked. When they broached the possibility, I was like, I can't. What? Like, I can't believe this is happening. I want to remember where I was in this moment. To see history being made, I was relieved that it was Dicker, who's a really good kicker, right? Because it introduced the possibility he'd actually make it. Because it was 57 yards, correct? So it's a very difficult kick.
And you don't practice that as a kicker, so wouldn't it just feel weird that there's no one in front of you? I guess I should set up what a free kick even is, because I had to go back to school to it. On the, when someone punts the ball, when you call for a fair catch, or if there's a penalty, which it was in this case, where they didn't allow you to have the fair catch, you have the option to kick the ball, and you could drop kick it as well, but that's not a thing that happens anymore. You have the option to kick the ball with no field goal blocking team trying to stop you. They have to be 10 yards away. Now, in theory, you could do that any time of the game that you want. You could do it on first down early in the game, but it would make no sense. So it really only comes up in situations on the last play of the half or right at the end of the half. And the Broncos had some weird play calling where they weren't really trying to score at the end of the second quarter, and they certainly weren't thinking about this scenario. And then they threw and they had an incomplete, and Harbaugh smartly took a timeout to possibly set up this punt return. I don't know if he was thinking about the free kick, but suddenly the Broncos are punting, and even as it's happening, I'm thinking, oh, this is a free kick chance, but they're going to be way back. It would be like a 65, 70-yard kick, and it ends up being a penalty on the Broncos. It sets Dicker up. Let's listen once again to Matt Money Smith.
This is wild. Right on top of the Bolt logo. You got to cover it, right? So Dicker for 3. And this kick is up, and it is good. How about that? A free kick field goal for Cam Dicker from 57 yards. All of his teammates rush the field to celebrate. 8 seconds left on a punt, and the Chargers get 3 out of it.
Man, that was good from 70 or so. I mean, that was
He's
way
good,
up there.
dude. I feel like I know he was probably an All-Pro last year. I can't remember who was first team and second team, but I feel like all his kicks are always like split the middle too. He's like very directionally accurate. He also was. I didn't notice this in the moment because I was immediately taken to social media. He was really chill about it. I would be losing my mind. Like, that's NFL history. As a kicker, do you even consider that possibility? Is it even something you think might happen to you? The other thing, so while I was while this happened, I was on the Wikipedia page for the fair catch rule because I just wanted to revisit the history of it. And Curly Lambeau looks identical to Lad McConkey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pull that up. Yeah.
I love that. I love that the record for the longest free kick previously was by Paul Hornung, which, not many people may know Paul Hornung's name, but he was probably the biggest star in the history of the NFL at the time that he played. He won the Heisman and was the best player in the league. Vince Lombardi famously said he's the best player ever. He would have been the equivalent of if Tim Tebow actually was the best player in the NFL. That was Paul Hornung. I mean, what a guy that he kicked a 52-yard field goal back then. I mean, adjusting for inflation, that's like 75. That's outrageous. And he was leading the league in touchdowns at the time too. But for it to happen, it really touched like a football dork bone for a lot of us. And you could hear it with DJ. Daniel Jeremiah was just laughing with absolute glee. That's how I felt too.
I didn't know Paul Hornung was a kicker. I didn't.
Oh yeah, that was what made him crazy. Like he would lead the league in points every year because he was a badass kicker and would score all their touchdowns, even if he had like a vaguely disappointing career. Even though he was a Hall of Famer, it was like one of those where like people thought he'd be the best. Anyways, I will absolutely shut up now. What do you think about the Chargers moving forward? They finished with a couple easy games on paper. They're in Foxborough. Not a total gimme, but they should win that. And then they're in Las Vegas for the last game. They only need to win one of those 2 games to make the playoffs. And because of the tiebreaker, now they're in a good position to possibly be ahead of Denver for the 6th seed, which we have to see how it all plays out, but that might mean you avoid Buffalo. That would be, nice. I think you would want to play for that. Do you think they have like enough? Because you talked about not knowing some of the pass catchers. What about this secondary? Like, what about this defense? It's pretty wild who they're putting out there right now.
I really don't like them against teams that can run the football like Buffalo and Baltimore can. But when you throw those out, you're looking at a lot of teams. I mean, the Kansas City is an efficient running game, at that point. But Denver, just saw Pittsburgh, Houston. I think they had a shot in all 3 of those games. I mean, just structurally. And then the other thing, like, again, this game reminded you, like, if you have one of those dudes, you can win any game. That sounds like such a simplistic reduction of what we just saw. So much happened.
Yeah, but it's true. It's true. It is true.
What happened?
And a good coaching staff, because he has been that dude before, and he's not always been healthy, but I think that's held him back. And even though the Chargers defense is on a downward slope, and we had a disagreement before the season. We put it on the line of whether they would finish top 20 in DVOA. They will fall further. They're about 9th going into this game. They'll fall down to like 11th or whatever, but they're fine. But they're getting worse. There was a point in this game where they had a dime package out there with, first of all, Tony Jefferson is like a stone cold starter at this point now. He was out of football last year. He was in the Ravens scouting department. Marcus May just joined the team a couple weeks ago, and then they lost him during this game. I'm here thinking, man, they really miss Elijah Molden, who was good for them, but it's like when you're really missing him, they miss Alohi Gilman, and we're playing a guy named Kendall Williamson at safety. They're just playing players that have barely played at the NFL level. Who was the other one? DeAndre Leonard.
Wayne Leonard. He was he really struggled last year. He's bounced around the league for a while, but
right. So it's kind of a ragtag group. And then I'm being a little bit of a homer here in terms of like getting more frustrated with the Chargers than I maybe would another team. But Joey Bosa has not been healthy apparently all year and has not helped them. Although in this game, he did make a few plays. I give him credit for that. But Bosa and Mack have not been great towards the end of the year. They've been running right at Khalil Mack the last couple of weeks.
yeah, it's a ragtag unit for sure. I didn't know Marcus May was on the Chargers. That's why I was like, Marcus May, when you mentioned that he ran in, it says he was claimed off waivers on November 27th.
I think he got a game ball in his first game as a Charger because he got a pick in that game. It's crazy.
Super quick 20-second Marcus May story. I sat next to him on a plane once. It was a cross-country flight. Talked a lot of ball. He was really awesome. And he was back on the Jets at the time because he was like a third-round pick, right? If I remember correctly, he was decently high. And 39th overall. Okay, second round. But while we were on the plane, an elderly woman who went to Florida was sitting in front of us and passed him a note. We just saw like a hand come through the seat and it had a piece of paper. And when he opened it, he looked so profoundly uncomfortable. And he looked at me, he was like, I don't know what to do with this. Anyways, I think about that every time I see him.
Well, I want to know, but did you ask what was in the note?
I think it was solicitous.
That is awesome. I mean, that is a wild story. I'm so glad Marcus May came up on this podcast just so you could tell that story.
For him.
Did you know that? Did he know who you were?
It came up in our conversation because I think I was going to actually ESPN and he was like, oh, you were at ESPN? And we started talking about football stuff. He was great.
That's awesome. The Broncos, by the way, just like stepping back a minute, have a much more realistic scenario. The percentages would say they're pretty safe to make the playoffs. And yet when it comes to this stuff, I think how I would think as a fan, and I would suddenly be worried. I'm looking at the next gen stats. They're back to the 7 seed. They're at 85%. That sounds great. But if they lose out, they have the Bengals next week, and I am definitely trusting the Broncos over the Bengals. But it's in Cincinnati. It's Joe Burrow in a big spot. Like, the Bengals are watching this game and they're loving this. If they can beat the Browns this week and then they beat the Broncos, if nothing else, they get to week 18 playing meaningful football, which I think as a Bengals fan, that's a win. The Broncos are playing the Chiefs in week 18. The Chiefs could very well be playing for the number 1 seed. They could not either, depending on what happens in between against the Texans and the Ravens. And then you could see Denver fall the way out. And perhaps the most annoying scenario for the Bengals would be they actually do win out. And it's not going to be easy for them. They play Pittsburgh the final week. It's going to be pretty tough for the Bengals to get through. But they could win out, and actually it'd be the Colts who sneak in at 9-8. I've done all the scenarios. If the Colts tie there, the Colts would actually be the one who get in over the Broncos, and the Colts have the easiest schedule possible over the last 3 weeks. So I do think this result kind of opened it up just a little bit, and the Dolphins are also happy. It's just a little.
I guess the tricky thing with the Bills and the Chiefs is if the Chiefs win 16-17, they have nothing to play for in week 18. So then so that would be tough for the Bengals.
There's a lot though, as you know, I'm not trying to just be a company man, but usually at this time of year, it's not just about me loving Justin Herbert. I do want the games, like I wanted the Colts to win last week too, because whatever can give us the most meaningful games so that the games aren't dead down the stretch. All right, Mina, before we let you go, look, it's been a long day. When I was driving in at SoFi Stadium earlier today, the Broncos buses were right in front of me with the police escort. And we actually have some sound from some other gentlemen still inside SoFi Stadium. Let's listen.
All right, I'm here with the voice of the Chargers, Matt Money Smith. Gregg, Mina, hope you guys are well. Money, big takeaway from the game.
Big takeaway is the first time they faced adversity, and we wanted to see them answer the bell. A lot of people saying they couldn't win a big game. They had only beat teams with losing records. They come out in the second half, shut out the Broncos offense, and Justin Herbert goes to town.
Yeah, I thought Herbert, just kind of took the game over. I wrote it down. The run he had in the third quarter, it could have slid, stays up, gets the first down. Then you have him extending plays to Darius Davis for a touchdown, extending plays on the little flip to Hassan Haskins, and then the run he had on third down, like 3rd and 11 or something like that, and he takes off and gets first down as well.
10 different receivers. Darius Davis, first career touchdown. Hassan Haskins, first career receiving touchdown. Hayden Hurst hadn't played since November 10th, and he gets a huge third down catch. He just spread it around. He did what Justin Herbert does, He finds the open man, and it worked.
Yeah, sometimes you have to have someone carry the load. Mina, you know what I'm talking about. It's just what you got to do. You got to step up, and you got to cover up some of the sins of the others that may be sitting next to you.
And that's you and me, or
no. That's just Mina with
like
Gregg. We're on a different thing. This is more of a equal level partnership.
Okay, perfect.
Not what's going on with
Can
Gregg
I
and
step
Mina.
forward so I look a little taller? There we go. That's better.
All right. Let's clean up the booth. We don't want Maurice to get mad at us.
Oh yeah, exactly.
All right, yeah, throw it down. All right, hey, see you guys. Bye.
Thank you to Daniel Jeremiah and Matt Money Smith. Yes, you got to check out the show on YouTube so you can just see how young all that surfing at 5 a.m. every morning is keeping Matt Money Smith. I don't know how he does it. I don't know why they wasted so much time, until the point where Jeremiah took a shot at me. It just all felt like, foreplay or something like that.
Oh man, I feel like they had kind of the same takeaways as us, which makes me feel good.
Yes, Mina, you've been very kind to join us tonight. It is Mina Kimes season. I know you don't want me to talk too nice about you, but you were on the Simpsons Altcast, which changed the game in my house. Walker's watching Simpsons all the time now. The Altcast actually got him more onto the Simpsons. He loved it. And obviously, you got the Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny. It's almost annoying. You're getting better and better as a podcaster. Not that you weren't always great, but I'm always thinking like, damn, she's always improving. And then NFL Live. And then you're going to be on Netflix, which is really cool on Christmas.
Christmas Day.
How excited are you about that? And you're coming on this show and like a million other Friends shows this week. You can say no, Mina, but you are that kind of friend. I appreciate that. I saw Chargers Broncos on the schedule, and I thought that's the game for me. Interesting, you brought me on before the Seahawks game, by the way, which might be kind of over by then. But I'm excited for the Christmas games, especially now that Mahomes is healthy. It's going to be really fascinating because they're flipping, right? They're playing on Saturday and they're just flipping opponents, which I love as an analyst just because it makes my life a lot easier. Just watch the two games and you get a few days to think about it. But I'm really pumped. I mean, it is like a legitimately great slate of games with Ravens, Texans, and Chiefs, Steelers. So I'm looking forward to it. And it's cool. I think it's a cool opportunity because I came up thinking in this business, like, it would be great to have some non-players up there just as analysts. We basically only see non-players as reporters or as play-by-play guys or whatever. And I think it's awesome that in a spot like a freaking Christmas Day game, which those will be among the most watched games of the year. That
nervous.
Don't be nervous. It's not about that. Like you've already done all the work, but that you're out here repping. You're out here repping for the analysts, and you're gonna be awesome because you do such a good job. Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope people enjoy it. And Beyonce. Yes. Come on, there's Beyonce. Thank you, Mina Kimes. That's it for the YouTube portion of the show. We will see you, Mina,